Welcome back. This is Arthur. Just going to have a quick video today. I wanted to go over some of the units that I'm using in these decks during this series that pits the Israelis versus the Syrians. Show you some of the decks, or show you these decks that I'm using, and talk about some of the units in them in this Ash and Shadows mod for those of you who haven't used it before. So I guess firstly we can look at the Israeli deck that I've got. This is a general deck, no specialization, and in the logistics tab, we're going to have the usual stuff, except for a couple of little differences. Obviously you got a fob. I've got these Pikud, I don't know what they are, Jeep trucks here, but they have no armor whatsoever, so I'm thinking about changing those out for something like the BTR-40 Pikud, which have one armor, but they're 25 points more per, and of course you only get 5 of those, but thinking that might be worth the trade-off. Now, obviously, I think most decks only go with 2 cards of CV, and in logistics, most people don't, fill out the full slots. But I've gone with 3 cards because I'm just finding that I need the, because I'm a bad player, I'm finding that I need the versatility of having a tank, a hard tank, counter, I guess, for CV, and also some infantry CV so that I can sneak them into places or hide them in buildings where need be. As for logistics, you'll see that I'm carrying 2 cards of these, whereas I think a lot of people will only maybe carry 1. I know that good players will generally not carry a lot of logistics because they're just adept at microing their units and managing them, whereas I am not so good, and I will frequently run out of units, so I need to top them up and keep them out in the field as much as possible. I don't know, maybe I'll change my mind later on, but we've got these Oshkosh, which I guess are basically like a hempt, and then we've also got the Yasur, which looks like a CH-53 model. I'm not sure, but at 75 points it comes with 3,700 supplies, so it's not so bad. Moving on to the more interesting infantry tab. So this is where you people might really have some questions about what I'm doing. So we've got 2 cards of man pads. One of them, the really cheap ones, the Recon. They've got good range, but only 2 HE. They're they're pretty accurate at 65%. Plus you get them at hardened, so they've got a little bit of buff on that accuracy. But then also the Bazak, which are a little bit more range, better accuracy. Again, only 2 HE. And I just find that I need these things to counter all the helicopters, because bringing out the heavy AA stuff to counter helicopters, it doesn't seem like a good trade in points. The Dorban LR, or long range, I guess you know these from the vanilla game, except you'll see that the spike is much further in range. Still got 65% accuracy and 25 AP. The one thing that they don't tell you about this is that they fire quickly and the missiles are super fast. Maybe that's still the same as vanilla. I haven't played vanilla in a while. But the other thing that you'll notice that's different in Ash and Shadows, I guess, from the vanilla game, is that I think in vanilla the number of or the strength of the unit is only 3, whereas in this it's 6, meaning it can withstand maybe 2 HE rounds, tank rounds, as opposed to dying on the first hit otherwise. Moving on, we've got the tons Hanim. San Hanim. I don't know if I'm saying it. San Hanim heavy. These guys are kind of like they're my main go-to, really. They've got this heavy tag, and the heavy tag in Ashen Shadows means that you can sustain a little more damage, or they take a little bit less damage than normal. They've got decent, fire rate, not real accurate. They've got a CQC heavy machine gun. But the main thing that I want them for is that 875 meter, 70% accuracy AP round. You can hide these guys in buildings or in forests, and they'll take out most anything except for the heaviest of tanks. And even then, if you get a heavy tank and you can manage a side shot on them, then that'll work too. Now the meat shield basically are these Golani. Now I say they're the meat shield. They're really not. They're the mainstay of what I use. I've got them in the cheap transports, but they've got that really good RPG 7 VR, which, as you can see, it's got 24 AP. It's not super accurate, but once they kill a couple of tanks or a few transports, their veterancy will go up, and they can hit more. They come hardened, so they get a little bit of a small buff to their accuracy anyway. But I find them to be great. They're great units. They melt really quickly in the face of any kind of sustained resistance, but they can do a lot of damage in the interim, and they're cheap enough to where you can call more of them out very quickly. The Shayatet 13, which I guess are special forces, does what it says on the tin. Use them for forest battles, the normal special forces stuff that you might use them for. Again, their machine gun is not really the most accurate, but it's got pretty good hitting power at 1.5 HE. But also they've got that B300 heat rounds. They've got 10 of them, and they're good to have. Just to keep them as a kind of an all-rounder in case of. So moving on, we'll look at the support tab. I tend to go heavy anti-air, and as you can see, the Kala David is my anti-air of choice. I could go with something cheaper, like where is it? The Shenav 2, which is, I guess, a Hawk. The Hawk has more hitting power, yeah, but I don't know. I like the 10% accuracy buff on the Kala David. Also, the 95% accurate, or excuse me, the fact that it's got 6 missiles rather than 3 means you can send it out on its own and it won't run out of missiles in one pass by enemy air. Of course, I've got the Recon, which I guess is like the Chaparral. In this mod, its range is buffed up to 3325. I'm not sure if I think that's different from the vanilla game. HE power is 4, so it's good. The accuracy is only 50%, and I've, taken these at trained, which means they're not going to hit as well, but if you take them at hardened, you only get 4, and I find that I run out of them very quickly. I've also taken this thing, the Macbeth, which is, I don't know, I guess it's a dual AAA and missile. It's got the stingers on there, which is good. It's very, lethal against helicopters, but I find that I don't use that as much as the Corvette, which these things, I don't know, they chew up planes like it's no tomorrow. Planes fly over, Because they're not radar guided, they can't be, even though it says 20 millimeter radar rounds. I guess I should point out, in this mod, you see over there underneath where it says Kala David, underneath where it says Stunner, you've got the area of effect, fire and forget, and the LOC tag means it's locatable by seed planes, right? So if it doesn't have that LOC tag, then it's not locatable, just like the Recon. It's infrared missile, so it doesn't have the LOC tag. Same with the Hovet, same with the Machbet, but these Hovet are cheaper, and I just find if you plop them around in your rear, areas, or in amongst where your tanks are, they just chew the planes up left, right, and center. So I'm happy with them. The Sholef, I went with these simply because I've tried the other, like the MLRS, the rocket things that they've got. So they've got this tactical missile, which is, I guess, like a Tochka from the Russians, but it takes forever to reload, and it doesn't have a large enough area of effect. The same for these MAR 290. Yeah, that's good if you want to clear out a town. And these LAR 160 I've never used because they've only got 4 AP power, and that's not really gonna do enough, at least not for my liking. So I've gone for the Sholef simply because if I need them, they come with 45 rounds. They can sustain, fire on a specific spot, and suppress an enemy really well. Of course, they got the smoke rounds too. So moving on, we'll look at the tanks. What I'm finding is, right, we'll go this way. So for the super heavies, I've gone with these T-72s, and yes, they have other super heavies. They've got these Merkava, Merkava 4, that have the missile and great armor on both the front and the side, and more AP power. They've got these Merkava 4 Mile Ruach with 12 APS. So if you see over there on the right where it says trophy, that's the APS, the automatic protection, or whatever it is. Shoots down missiles is what it does, and they do it fairly well. However, I'm just finding that when I play, I never get around to having enough points to calling these out in enough numbers to really do much. So I've gone with these T-72s. They've still got a lot of punching power. They don't have quite as much armor, but they have some APS. They have smoke rounds too. So if you're getting targeted by something like missiles, you can pop the smoke and back them up or something. I've also got these Merkava 3Ds. These have missiles on them, but again, these are kind of like the T-72s. I haven't really gotten into using them that much, and in fact I might ditch them for another card of the Merkava 3B, because that grenade launcher along with the tank rounds, it just chews through infantry like no tomorrow. Like, it's absolutely lethal to all infantry. I looked at the Merkava 2B, but I decided to go with the Magach 7C Yamel. It's a little bit more expensive, but the AP is better, and the front armor is better. Also, the range is 2275, so that makes sense. But really, the mainstay of this armored force is these things. These, I guess they're like an M60 or something like that. M60 with some applique armor added to them. So If you look at these things, they're only 26 points. Magak Si Bet Gal. I don't know if I'm murdering these terms. Let me know. But they've only got 12 front armor, but that's enough for a lot of things. However, they've got a good gun on them, and if you take them at the veteran, then they've got pretty good accuracy, and you get 12 of them, and you can spam them like there's no tomorrow. So you can just cover an entire area in these things, and they'll shut it down. Yes, they die easily. Just call out more. They're only 26 points. Right, moving on to reconnaissance. I think everyone knows about the Maglan with their spikes, the bane of the vanilla game. They're kind of the same here. They've got the spike here, but it's not the spike long range, it's the spike medium range. It still fires fast and it still travels fast, but they get 5 of them. These things will chew up infantry like it's no tomorrow. They're absolutely crush most infantry that come up against them. I've gone with the Siphon, which looks like a Bell Huey of some sort, or a Jet Ranger, excuse me. It's got good optics. 40 point cheapo. I do like these Tyran 5 Blazer, Recon tanks. You got 13 front armor. That's about it. The gun is enough to take on infantry with 3 HE and 13 AP. They're okay. I could possibly use some more stuff in the Recon tab. I've got another slot for it. I may change that out in future. I don't know. I could use these. What are they? Apaches. Called the Seraph, with the Hellfires and Stingers. But again, I just don't know about spending 145 points on something that's may not be so useful. So moving on to the vehicle tab, I've only got one thing in the vehicle tab, and that is this, the Perret. And this thing is beautiful. It's a tank with a bunch of missiles stuck on the top. 24 of them to be exact, and they've got huge range. They've got great accuracy, good stabilizer, and good AP. It can handle some shots from lower, not main battle tanks, but from APCs and things like that. But ideally, it should be well out of the way of engaging any MBTs or even the APCs for that matter, because it's just got such range and 24 missiles, good accuracy. Yeah, they only come in trained, but I guess I could get 2 of them in hardened instead, but I only have 1 card for the vehicle tab, so I figured I'd go ahead and go with 3. The helos, I've got the P-10, which are the Apaches with 16 Hellfires. They are pretty standard, I guess, 3150 range. They've got 70% accuracy and good AP. I generally don't end up using them because what I've found is that these Lahatut Mapats do the job well enough. They're not super accurate, but they're accurate enough and cheap enough to where I can call out 2 or 3 at a time and overwhelm any kind of tank rush if I have to. I mean, say overwhelm, I don't know about overwhelming, but they're cheap and they come out and they do a job, so that's good. Of course, we've got the Cepha with the Stingers and the Hydra. These, I wish I could take another card of them, but you only get 1, so I took them at the trained instead of hardened. Maybe I should go with hardened instead of trained, but I prefer to have more. So moving on, and lastly to the air tab, I'm previously gone with 2 cards of ASF, and that is because I kept losing my planes and I kept getting bombed to smithereens, so I wanted to try and fight them in the air if possible. So we've got these Akef, and this is probably the only thing that I wonder about on this mod, is why the Israeli Air Force would have some of the lowest training of aircraft. I don't know. I guess it's a balancing thing or something like that. But all the ASFs here have really, low training unless you just want to take a 1, which for me is not good enough whenever you're facing, spam of, MiG-23s and Rafales. So anyway, we got 2 of these Akef. They've got, if you can see yourself, they've got good missiles. They've got 12 of them, so they're pretty top-notch. ASF, they've got excellent ECM and detection speed, good range on the missiles. Only thing I don't like is they've only got 2 HE. I wish their missiles had a little bit more punch, but hey ho, that's all you get. The Baz Meshupar, these things have the same missile, I think. It's not the Darby, is it? Yeah, it's a different missile. It's the Darby, but not the ER. So it's a little bit shorter range, but good accuracy on it, 80%. These Python 4s, pretty good for taking down helos. Same thing, a little bit less ECM, but it's essentially an F-15, right? Moving on, we've got our Karnas 2000, which in this mod, I don't know about vanilla, but in this mod, it's a seed plane, but it also comes with these very long-range semi-active radar missiles that have 4 HE. So they can be good in firing. I wish they did the volley fire where you would get 2 of them sent at a time, but they don't. It's 1 at a time, and they're kind of slow in coming off the rails. The AGM 84 is pretty darn good. I mean, in my experience, they've been pretty accurate. So I like it. It's the only thing I don't like about this is that it's got 900 speed, which in this mod is not so great. However, the alternative is the Ayit, which is an A4 Skyhawk, and its speed is even much less, 600 kilometers an hour. It's got the jammer pods, but don't know how well they do. And you got to get a little bit closer with the seed missile, the harm. I just don't like it. It's not fast enough to get away from all the IR missiles and AAA that it might have to fly near to have a pop at the big, radar SAMs. So I'm going with the Karnas. I've had decent luck with it, so far. So we'll stick with that. Next up is the Nets, which I guess is an F-16 with cluster bombs, AP cluster bombs. I like to have an AP cluster bomber because frequently the AI will, crowd all their tanks together, and it's, I don't know, I just find it useful. It's a bit expensive, but it works. It's only got 7 AP, so you're probably not going to, kill anything in one pass. However, it does have 6 bombs, and that's good. But with 2 of them, you could essentially probably kill most, MBTs in this game. The Barak 2, again, is an F-16. It's got the Mavericks. It's also got a couple of helicopter, short range infrared missiles, very useful for taking down helos. Decent ECM, 1,000 kilometers per hour. These things come off 2 at a time, the Mavericks, and they're good. They're pretty accurate, and they will sometimes come off fast enough to where they're close enough together they can make it through a tank's APS rounds. So when the tank fires the APS to knock down the missiles, if the second missile is coming in quick enough or close enough, it can hit the tank before it has a chance to fire off the next round of APS, which, as you can see at 29 AP, can usually kill, if not severely damage, even the heaviest of armored tanks. And last but not least, we have the Lavi, which is just a plain old bomber. It's got 10 500 kilogram bombs at 15 HE, 40% ECM, 1,000 kilometer speed, a couple of missiles to protect itself, although I'm thinking about going with back to the Kafir C7. Don't know why, but I just like the idea of one giant 1,400 kilogram bomb that does 28 HE. The only thing that's not so great about these is they have low ECM and their speed is a little bit slow. But I think if you're a good player, not me, then you can use these things very effectively. Some other things to note in this air tab. These things, the Brakit, they have these glide bombs that have 7,000 meter on them. They've also got some fire-forget Darbies missiles, but I don't like to use the glide bombs because it takes forever to rearm the planes. You use them once and then you don't see them again for the rest of the scenario. The same goes for these, the Ram. They've got 4 of these 1,000 kilogram missiles, and you can drop them from 5,000 meters away. Sure, that's great. It sounds good. Of course, they've got Darby ER air-to-air missiles. Problem is like I said, once you drop these, then your plane is out for the rest of the scenario, rearming the missiles. Not sure why it takes that long. Maybe it's the designer's choice, but there you go. The other thing of note is the F-35 that comes with these electro-optical missiles. It's pretty good, pretty good for taking out tanks. But also, I've found the same problem with them. They take forever to reload, so I don't bother with it. And that's pretty much the air tab for, or the whole thing for Israel. We can move on, and I'll show you the Syrian deck that I've made. And again, we'll start with the the FOB, the command jeeps. In this case, it's, I don't know, it's kind of like a Humvee. Forgot what it's called. Oh, it's the Russian version, the Tiger or something like that. But then we also give them some command tanks, T-72s. And again, if you're not familiar with this mod, you'll see that a lot of this stuff is East German models, so pay no attention to that. It's the Syrian army. Of course, we go with lots of resupply in case they need it. I'm not sure why I didn't go with the helicopter, but I think, yeah, I just thought it wasn't good value, so I went with these T-815s because they have more supply in them. Looking at the infantry tab, we've got the of course we've got the man pads with stingers, and the reason why they're stingers is because, like I said, even though this is supposed to be the Syrian army, I think they're also kind of throwing in some Egyptian units along with them. Therefore, you'll see some of the Egyptian hardware that's available for the Syrians. So that's, even though it's called the Syrian army, it's kind of like a cross between the Syrians and the Egyptians. So they've got stingers. It's good enough. They've got good accuracy. Same kind of deal as the others. These are, as you'll probably know, the Cornet. Pretty long range on them and pretty accurate and good AP power. Also, like the Spike, they travel pretty fast once they're on the move. They don't fire quite as quickly as the Spikes do, but once they're fired, they move pretty quickly, so it's hard to get away from them. These things, Jundi Kafifa, they're kind of like Gorno Strelki or something to that effect. They've got this Shershin anti-tank missile, which is pretty darn good. And if you rock up next to a building without realizing these guys are in there, they'll destroy your vehicles, as I've found out to my detriment. We've got these special forces, the Saka Heavy. Again, the heavy tag means they can take more damage. Taking them at the veteran because you get 12. Could get 10 of them at elite, but I don't know, I just decided to go with 12 at veteran. They come with the RPG 29, which is pretty painful. They also have Iglas, which are also painful. And so these are units to be identified and killed quickly if I spot them on the field, right? Moving on, we've got the, I'm not even going to try and pronounce that, as Saika. These are just standard shock infantry that come with an RPG 7V, which is decent, not great accuracy. I've got them because they're cheap, they're not militia, and they come available with this BMT 84 as their transport, which is a pretty handy tank to have. 18 front armor, 50% accuracy on the gun, 4 HE on the gun, so it's not such a bad transport to have. Moving on, we've got these Haris al-Magir. Oh God, I'm murdering all these words, but I have to give it a try, The Haris al-Magir, if you know how to pronounce it, let me know. These are the mainstay of the Syrian army, and again, got them in wheeled transport so they can get there quickly. And they've got the RPG 7VR, which is pretty painful. They've got a good CQC weapon. It's doesn't have a lot of stopping power, but it's reasonably accurate, and it's got a stabilizer, so it's not so bad. For 14 points, I think they're a pretty decent buy. I've also brought them in the BMP-2Cs that have the autocannon, the 30 millimeter autocannon, with the Concours anti-tank missile, which is not great, but hey, if one hits, it's better than not. Mainly bringing these out for the autocannon. Yes, I looked to see if they had like a BMP, what is it, the PMP-1D that has the grenade launcher or something like that, but they don't. So they don't really have a grenade launcher on these BMPs that I could use. So that's kind of the infantry tab. The support, they've got the famous Cub or Book, long range anti-air, although theirs is not nearly as long range. I think they've got Pensier, which is just a stupid looking anti-air unit, but for some reason the way the AI works, it doesn't use them at all. Like, it calls them all out and then leaves them in the back behind the lines, so I'm probably going to change those out. I think I'm going to change them out for some of these OSAs. the only difference between them, well, I mean, there's a few big differences, but one of the main differences that one of the reasons why I went with Pantsir instead of OSA is that LOC tag. Again, with the LOC tag, you can you can find them with seed aircraft and knock them out. So I went with Pantsir, but I think I'm going to change those out. I might go with more with the OSAs, as I just explained, or more of the Sosna R, which are, I forgot what they're called. I forgot what the Russian model is, but it's almost the same thing as a Chaparral, but they've got 70% accuracy, and yeah, these things will take down some air. Same with the Biryusa, or the Syrian export model Biryusa. These things are great, huge, good range and massive fire rate. So if your plane flies over them, you better hope that it's got enough speed to get away, because it's going to get chewed up. Lastly, we've got some artillery. These are the German model, but it's just your basic 152 millimeter artillery. You get 5 of them. I went with the lower veterancy, so you get more spread. Like, I guess I could have taken 4 at veteran, but I went with 5 at trained instead, so they spread out. Their dispersion is a little more. Good HE, same thing, 40 rounds. It's the normal kind of artillery thing that you will use. Moving on to the tanks. Right, so we've got the 4 T90 AMs. They've got APS. They've got, I wouldn't call that a long-range missile in this mod, because it's only 2,600 meters, but neither is the accuracy is not great either, even if it does get a buff from being hardened. But they're still a pretty tough tank to kill. They've got 23 front armor, 12 side armor, 65% accuracy, 55 stabilizer, and 24 AP power. So they're definitely something that will get your attention when they, are spotted. These things, the Al-Abramsky, these are ones that have caused me a lot of problems up front, because they've got that 24 front armor, 24 AP power, and 4 HE. They're just nasty tanks at 128 points. Fortunately, they don't have a great amount of side armor, so you can pop them from the side, but you have to maneuver around pretty carefully, or maybe get lucky and have one of them turn to you. These things, the T72B3, I realize it's using a T80 model here. I don't know why, because in game they actually look more like a real T72B3. Like, I guess they're using the T90 model in the actual game. I don't know, but in game they don't come out looking like a T80. So the T72B3 has got APS, of course, and yeah, at 120 points they come out and they just wreck everything. They got 70% accuracy, 23 points of AP, and they're just horrible. Then we've got the M1 Abrams, or M1A1 Abrams. I think it's just your standard M1A1. I don't know about the price on it being different than vanilla, but it's pretty standard. And then we've got 10 of these T72 S1s. I think it's an S1, not an SI. And these are just kind of like spam tanks. They don't do a lot of AP, but they're kind of the meat shield tank for this deck. I don't know. I was thinking about getting rid of some of the other tanks, perhaps maybe the Al-Abramskys, I don't know. and putting in some more meat shields like these Ramesses 2, but I'm not sure if that's necessary at all. If you have any ideas about how to make it better, or how to make the deck, better, then let me know. So moving on to the Recon tab, we've of course got the Ka-52s. These are different Ka-52s in that they come with seed missiles instead of AA, instead of Iglas. They do have the anti-tank missiles, which I guess are buffed, but they're still a pain in the butt to deal with. Fortunately, they're priced at 145, so the AI doesn't really call them out very early. These, however, these AHS MI2s, you get 7 of them, and they put them everywhere, and they're just, I don't know, they spot stuff, and then you get insta-bombed by the air fleet from hell, or you get arty rain down on you. The Task Force 99 Recon, you'll notice that it's a shock infantry for Recon. It's got the heavy tag, so it takes less damage. 15 strength points. And it's just, I don't know, it's just a good Recon unit. You can use them to actually fight in towns, or you can use them in a traditional Recon, role where they just sit off to the side or somewhere and spot units for you. I've got some in the Glory Wagon trucks, and I've got some in Blackhawks in case you want to try and maybe insert behind the lines. But either way, they're pretty useful. They're pretty handy, I think. As for vehicles, we've got these Cornet launchers. Now, I did have some of these, BMPTs in there, but I just found that the computer didn't use them again, and I felt like I could get more use out of having these Tunchas, mortars, rather than the BMPTs. Maybe I should change the BMPTs out with the Cornets, I don't know. But these Tunchas, I don't know if I'm murdering the names, but they crush everything. They've got that 5 HE. They got 60 rounds, and they fire 9 rounds a minute. And I don't know if you saw the last video, but everything of mine was constantly being shelled, and that's because they've got 12 of these Tuncha, and they can call them out. They're only 40 points, and just spam mortar shells everywhere. It's pretty effective. It actually works. So they've got smoke with it, and of course they've got the 5 HE, so they've got everything panicked. And yeah, it's pretty effective. Some other things that you've got in here, I don't know, you've got the Red Arrow missile truck, or the Cornet. I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to change out the Cornets for the Terminators. I like the Cornets because they've got a little bit more range, and you can pull them back. They're wheeled. They'll move back quicker. So don't know. That's why I went with them. As for the helos, went with the MI-24s because they're just huge, and they've got, their anti-tank missile is not great, but their anti-air missile, the R-73V, is pretty darn good. 70% accuracy with a 70% stabilizer, and 3 HE. Yeah, that works. Also, these MI-8 TVK, those are pretty good. They've got a nice TV guided anti-tank missile. It looks like a Chinese HJ-10A, along with a 57 millimeter rocket pods on them. So they will definitely mess up your infantry. They'll definitely mess up your vehicles, your tanks too. So they're pretty good, and they've got 8 hit points, so they can take a couple of missiles before they go down. I didn't go with the Apaches here. They're just I don't know, too expensive, you know, too expensive when you've got other options. So I decided to leave them out. And last but not least, we'll go to the air tab. So we've got the Egyptian Rafales. These come at veteran. And yeah, as you can see, they've got the semi-active radar missiles at 13,000 meters with 4 HE on them. They've got 4 of those, and then they've got 4 closer the Mica infrared missiles. All of them are quite good. All of them are high HE. And they're fast. I mean, the plane is fast. It's 1,200 kilometers an hour. It's got exceptional air detection and 50% ECM. You can turn on a dime. They're just what you would expect from a top ASF. I've also got these MiG-29 M2s that I put in there, and they're kind of a fighter bomber. They've got the long-range R-77s, which are good, but then they've also got the HE missiles that you can launch from 5,000 meters. So at 100 points a pop, I figured I would go with the lower vet and have 4 of them. Moving on, we've also got the Su-24 M4P. These are Sea aircraft. If you look at the speed on them, that makes you might look at this aircraft and say, yeah, well, it's only got 30% ECM. It doesn't really need it because it's so fast that it gets in and out of the battle space quicker than most anti-air can react. And indeed, what I've found is that they come out and they're on top of you before you can realize to shut down your radar missiles or turn off their weapons, right? So I always put my radar missiles on a hotkey so I can quickly, bring them up and then turn off the radar if need be. But these things are so fast that they come out and they kill your radar missiles before you even have a chance to react. So it's kind of good, kind of bad, but give them at 70 points and 4 of them. That's pretty, even the AI can use those pretty well. Additionally, they've got these Su-22 M5s. Now, let's look at these. I use those instead of, wait a second, where do they do not have an Su-25. So they have the Su-22 M5, and that's kind of like the anti-tank missile for them. They're okay. They're not great, but they're good enough. We've got the MiG-25s. Again, they're okay. They have a huge turning radius, and they're not very fast. So I think the computer is not great at using them. I think a human would be better at making their flight path to where they don't have to go over the entirety of the enemy space and thus have to suffer, trying to dodge all sorts of IR missiles and such. They do okay. As if you saw the last video, one of these wiped out an entire squad of my infantry in one pass. So yeah, or excuse me, 2 squads of infantry. So they can do a lot of damage if they, get in there. But yeah, they're all right. These things, the peace vector, I find are the ones that I hate the most because they come in and they drop all these HE bombs in addition to napalm bombs. So everything is panicked and has probably lost a few hit points already from the HE. So they're panicked, they're on fire, they sit in the fire because they're panicked, and then they die. So yeah, I hate those things. As soon as they come out, I want to try and target them and take them down if I can, but it is what it is. Anyway, that's a look at the decks that I'm using. Hope you've enjoyed this. If you got any questions, leave them in the comments below. Try and get back to them as soon as I can. Hopefully tomorrow we'll have another gameplay video. I guess we'll continue the Syrian versus Israeli theme for a little while. Yeah, we'll just keep going with that. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time. See ya.